Hey, friends. Sometimes people get certain terminology confused, or they try to make one concept or definition be the same as something else. One of those is the word theme. Theme has 5 letters, Theme. And so if you think of this hand, like I've shown you a few times, as the introduction, the thumb, the body, the three middle fingers, and the conclusion as the ending, the conclusion, then a theme is something like the message that you can get from what the author is trying to share with you throughout the selection, the poem, the play, the passage, the story. So a theme is not a topic sentence of a paragraph or a main idea. See my little M there, main, and then I point to my I for idea. It's not a main idea of a paragraph. It's not a summary of a whole story, because in a theme, they're trying to get some big idea across to maybe something that you should or should not do, or something that you should change, or adapt to, or something that maybe, if it's in past tense, something that was already learned. So a lot of times, for those of you who used to do uh, fourth and seventh grade, 10th grade, ninth grade, one day it was personal narrative and the other day was expository. One of the ways to get the highest score, the four, because I used to be called, may the fours be with you. Now I'm called the right prescription, because we're trying to get a five when we WRITE our essay on a computer. Okay. So one of the things that it said you could get a four was that you had to have an extension at the end of your personal narrative. And what was an extension? Not an extension cord, but an extension come out of the story and say, is there some sort of life lesson that you can learn? And so even though most of the time the passages, the genres that ask for a theme might not have a story in them, there's still a lesson or a message that can be learned at the end. So I'm going to use, for this video, for this question, my hand, and I'm going to have each letter in the word theme stand for something, with a little trick on the H of theme. I'm going to change the H into two I's, an I and I and I, two different things that start with an I, because it fits much better if I do that. So let's get started, and I will show you a way. This is for those of you who have uh, signed up for part two. It's right now $30, and you can get um, a practice test every week to 10 days. It just, I'm really trying to pace it because of my health and my family. But because the price is so cheap, I'm I'm doing this from now. I think I start at the beginning of November all the way until the test. So with the exception of holidays such as Christmas, spring break, and Easter, you're going to get a practice test every week to 10 days, and all the tools that will come with it, like this little theme. You already have a hand, but I'm going to send you uh, the two pages that we'll look at that answered this. It says on question 3, in your secondary uh, test, second test that I've sent you, using the ER approach, the evidence and response emergency room, use the article Candy for Dinner to answer the following question. That's the second passage in the paired passage that I gave you guys in secondary. Read the question carefully, then enter your answer in the box provided. What is the main idea or theme of the selection? So whenever they say main idea of an entire selection, think of a big idea, like maybe something like a light bulb moment that you get by the time you're finished with it. And so that's different than just the main idea of a simple little paragraph or a poem, sorry, a stanza or um, one little scene or one section has to be of the whole selection. That was the first point, the answer, the response. So your kids have to understand that that first question is going to have to be their response. That's why it's called a short constructed response. And then because of the second sentence, be sure to support your answer with evidence from the article. The rubric states all we need is one or more pieces of evidence. And sometimes, if you think of this E breakdown, I might have to find something from the beginning, something from the middle, and something for the end in terms of evidence. I might just find something in the beginning, middle, and another piece in the middle end, or I just might find one piece of evidence. It just depends on how difficult or rigorous the question. And so it does say to write your response in the box below, but I before we start getting into typing into computers and writing into boxes, I think that having a form like the one I'm going to show you here is going to be helpful. All right. So once again, a reminder, whether it's a passage, a poem, a play, an article, or a story, sometimes a theme is going to be something that you get an understanding of after reading the entire piece from the introduction through the body and into the conclusion. So that's kind of a cool way to look at it. And I just used our uh, readvising, editing, reading, writing graphic organizer that has a hand. There's a couple of hands in the graphic organizer. I just traced it and wrote that in there. And so here's the part where I think it's going to help some kids be able to understand a theme of a selection. So some things that will help. The T is going to be for title and any topics, like they have topics in a little bit bolder fonts. The title is Candy for Dinner, question mark. One of the topics, the only topic that's there is it healthy or not, question mark. Okay. So they establish a premise uh, trying to determine whether or not having candy for dinner is healthy. So the H of theme I mentioned, I changed to two little I's. Italics, if there is one, those are the slanted letters, and looking at either a piece of the introduction or um, a whole introduction. So here's the I for italics in the selection, and you can, those of you that have it, you can look at it and see. It says, long ago, some candy bars were considered a healthy meal. How far have we come since then? So in other words, you can see that perhaps if you were to watch my hand, if you infer, which is reading between the lines, you can probably guess that nowadays that's changed. Well, let's check out the introduction. In the early 1900s, I picked out what I thought was important. people thought that some kind of candy could be a complete meal. Put a period there and a period there. Today, though, they've discovered that some foods are healthier than others. Okay. The E, if it's not a poem or a play where there's not events taking place, you might have to use examples because informative pieces sometimes will have examples that they're using to explain a point they're trying to make, as in the case here. So we're going to be using the E for examples. Here's some that are in the passage that I found. That fruit has vitamins, good, positive. Meat has protein, good, positive. Payday and chicken dinner bars were made to replace meals. Okay. So those are some examples of some of the candy that were made, created, invented to replace meals. Okay. I found a little message that I can learn. What's something that's going to cause a problem with this part of your example, that the energy from sugar and candy bars doesn't last too long. The food that is higher in sugar can lead to health problems like diabetes. Okay. So we have to say, yes, in spite of them tasting great, we're going to have problems. We're going to run out of energy and we might end up getting a very common illness called diabetes. And then the ending, it kind of tells you that it brings closure and says candy is better eaten as a dessert, not a meal. And so when I have to come up with a theme, it has to be based on evidence. And so I used a little bit of the evidence from paragraph 2, some from paragraph 3, and this understanding of what they said in paragraph 4 to come up with my own idea. So when I flip this over, I go ahead and use my evidence, and I don't have quotations. I'm paraphrasing, but I'm using much of the words as the way they're written. In paragraph 2, the author states that people in the 1900s thought that some kind of candy could be a complete meal, comma, but today they have realized that some food is healthier than others. That did say that. It mentions in paragraph 3 that the energy from sugar doesn't last long and that it could create health problems like diabetes. So those are the two most important pieces of evidence that I feel can help me come up with a response about the theme. So the theme that could be derived, or one theme that could be derived, and so I'm doing the restating method of responding for kids who struggle. One theme that could be derived from the article, I just changed that word. Candy for dinner is that candy should not replace healthy foods uh, as a substitute for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And as we mentioned, that was written there, candy is better eaten as a dessert, not a meal. So in my own words, I use that phrase there. Don't replace healthy foods with candy as a substitute for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So that is the theme acronym. I hope that this can help you with some of your students that seem to struggle when it comes to the idea of a theme, the message, the life lesson, something, how can we become better, or how did people become worse from some experience or example that was talked about. So uh, thank you so much. And I'll be doing, for those of you in the um, part 2, we're going to be doing number 2 together in my next video for you. It was about the effect of an invention. So if the cause is the invention, what was the effect of that invention that it had? And again, we have to come up with the answer and then base it on evidence. And so I think it's always easier if your students will, once they get the topic in the question, they go straight to the evidence from the text, use that evidence. They can even write that evidence because it doesn't matter which one is written first. Then they'll come up with their answer or their response based on evidence so that they're not just restating questions without responding to them. Goodbye and God bless.